If you're missing the sounds of the office, then we've got a website for you. This is the Focus Group.
It's the savvy side of 9 to 5. Listen.
Bueller.
Laugh. And learn.
Negotiation. This is what you do in business.
This is the Focus Group with Tim Bennett.
Staunch.
And John Nash.
Keep your clothes looking neat and clean.
We're all business. Except when we're not.
Hey, welcome to the Focus Group. John Nash here in New York with my good friend and co-host Tim Bennett joining us from Philadelphia. FocusGroupRadio.com is the website you want to visit if you need to learn about us and our show, including our Tuesday podcast, Unbuttoned, which arrives on Tuesdays. That's what I said earlier. And all our video and audio is there. And, of course, our bios as well. So welcome to the new week. And hello, Tim.
Hey, John. How are you? How's everything going?
I'm good. I have a couple of comments to kick us off with. First, one of our listeners, Heather, and you've seen her notes in the past. Heather sent us a funny note about Unbuttoned this week. So on our podcast, audio only, 20 minutes, drops on Tuesdays. Tim was complimenting me on how I look on camera. And he said, we were talking about makeup. And so now you have to listen to it since I set it up that way. And she sent me a picture of Rosalind Russell as Auntie Mame. And she said, I just had to laugh out loud when Tim says, well, you've been looking good on the camera. You wearing the makeup. And I'm like, no, I have good lighting. And the picture of Rosalind Russell, she's holding like a martini glass, and it's from the movie Mame. And she just says, is everybody well lit? Like they're on their way, right? And the other thing I'm going to say, go ahead.
No, ironic, well lit in either way, right? Literally and figuratively. Yeah. Lit with your drink. And you are doing something, though, because I've noticed this now. You and I have done these Zoom things or these Skype things for a while. You won't tell me your trick. I know Bob's involved. I'll figure it out.
No, I told you the trick before. It's a 4 numerals. 1080, 1080p. I'm now coming to folks on my iPad Pro, or your phone could do it.
Don't I have the same equipment? Or no, I get all your hand-me-downs. I'm on 2010 technology, I think.
So you have, are you using the Apple Display as your camera right now?
Yeah, we bought last century.
Yeah, so those all web cameras, most cameras in laptops and on these displays last century. Yeah, it was, Tim. I think it might have been. Yeah. They have a 720p camera, so it's less resolution, it's less sharp.
Oh,
that's the only thing. And once I started editing these shows, I thought to myself, I need to make sure I look a certain way. So I thought I better get this camera thing nailed. So there you go.
Oh, you decided.
I decided, yeah.
What did you buy? Did you buy something else? What did you buy at Apple? You got a phone? Nothing else?
Oh, I got the cheapest new phone they make, that SE, which I'm in love with because it literally is the same size as the old Apple 6S right here. And then I got a keyboard for the Mac, my iPad Pro. And it has a trackpad and actually nice keys. You can actually do work on it. It's an actual functioning. Yeah, it's called the Magic Keyboard. I don't know who names these things for Apple, by the way. You and I totally missed that boat. And
is it Bluetooth? Is it Bluetooth or wireless?
It somehow hooks into the iPad's connectors on the back, but it's only for the Pro. And so I was going to mention the other thing I wanted to say is we're coming to you today I'm back in the city, and Bob and I came back to town, and we're having dinner in the apartment, and we haven't been here for a while, and we're sitting here, and we're like, oh, we're home. And I said, what do you think? And we were talking about the differences between being upstate or down here, and Bob said, you know what? I kind of think that being upstate, he goes, I think that's a taste of retirement. So you're at your house, and every morning, and when you're furloughed or you're not working, every morning you wake up and you're like, what am I going to do today? So I'm wondering, do you know what I'm getting? I thought it was very smart because I thought, is this what retirement's going to be like?
Well, you are different than most people I know. Most people have picked a destination, or they will say they would retire to their second home that they may have been using as a vacation home or something. But you don't feel that way. You think you'll stay in Manhattan, which is a great luxury if you can do it. But I think most people would probably either pick a place or they would sell their main residence and their second home, and then decide they're going to go to Arizona or wherever they go.
Yeah. I could see that. I could actually see that. And given what's happening with the event, New York may be a much cheaper city moving forward. It's very quiet, by the way. People are doing stuff, walking dogs. Everybody's wearing a mask, and they're all practicing social distancing. So it's kind of interesting to observe. And do you see that in your neighborhood too?
Yeah, I'm back in the Philadelphia area as well, and it's the same thing. It's mandatory. You can't go in anywhere without a mask. And the one thing I did find, because I was in Delaware for 7 or 8 weeks, whatever it was, and going to the grocery store there was very similar to just the way it used to be, except you wore a mask. But here in the Philadelphia area, it was like shopping in post-war Poland, as I said, and there was nothing on the shelves. I mean, nothing, not even a soy sauce I was looking for rice and chicken. And then the line was 45 minutes long to get to the checkout. And I had mentioned to somebody in line, I said, I thought I picked a good time. It was a Tuesday at 3 p.m. She goes, it's like this all the time. So I don't know what that's about.
Really? She was really like, oh, it's like this, this is the way it is, right?
Yeah, people had brought their tablets or their whatever they were doing. Everybody was standing in line on some sort of device, and nobody complaining. It's just, here we are. So, although one old lady tried to cut the line, and down by the breads and the donuts, somebody was lingering, and she cut in, and there was a little bit of a scuffle. But
have you seen any mask shaming going on?
I haven't yet. No, I've not seen any mask shaming, other than they want you to, when you're walking your dog. So I think if you're by yourself walking your dog outside in your neighborhood, I don't understand why I would have to wear a mask if I'm not coming in touch with anybody or staying 6 feet, 10 feet, 12 feet away. It's not comfortable. I see people driving in their cars by themselves with their masks on. I think that's a little crazy. Actually,
I'm going to just say this about that. We were at the upstate grocery store, which like your experience when you're down in Delaware, it feels very normal, except you have to follow the path because now you can only go up aisles in certain directions, right?
It's like IKEA.
Exactly. It's the same routing. But I got in the car after putting the groceries in the back, and we got maybe halfway back to the house before I realized I was still wearing my mask. So I wonder if you just forget about it. Like it was one of the surgical ones with the strings and the paper, and it's not that. It's kind of lightweight, and after a while you kind of get used to it, except that no matter how clean my teeth are, within 5 minutes of wearing one of these things, I think my breath is terrible. Have you had that experience too?
I haven't had that experience, but I've had it where my glasses have fogged up and I can't control it, and everybody's given me all kinds of ways to fix it. And you know me, I get hot anyway. Yeah. So for me to have this mask on with a little bit of facial hair and everything else is just the most uncomfortable thing on the planet for me. I imagine if this is going to go through the summer, which it looks like, I won't be out a lot with a mask on because it's just I feel claustrophobic and it's not comfortable. But that's what you do.
This is what you do in the time of the event.
I did binge watch this weekend. I binge watched. I got hung up. I was supposed to be doing something else that you and I were working on. Ended up taking a left turn. And a friend of ours, Brian Roman, told me that Dead to Me was back, which is a Netflix series. If you watched it last year, I think there's 8 or 10 episodes. And the new season started this weekend, and I sat and watched the whole thing on Saturday. And it's fantastic. I know you said Bob was a fan, but
loved it. You should
catch on.
He's so happy that there's a second season. He didn't know there was until you mentioned it.
I didn't. When the first season ended, you couldn't possibly figure out how there could be a second season, and boy, they delivered in spades. So it was good. And then I watched the Michelle Obama documentary that came out, Becoming, about her best-selling book, and that was interesting too. She said something that I remember Joan Rivers saying to Keith Price back on Sirius XM back in the day on OutQ. And I remember Keith mentioning he had the sidebar with Joan Rivers and talked about how he felt weird sometimes being the number 2 because he was the co-host to Larry Flick, but it was they weren't really equals, obviously, way Larry ran the show.
And we learned a lot later how unequal they were.
Right, but Joan Rivers said, you know what, you're in the room. And she said, that's what's important. You're in the room. And a lot of that was kind of what Michelle Obama was saying, too, about being in the room and being present. And even if you feel sometimes you might not belong or you feel uncomfortable, don't feel that way. You're in the room and you're there and you're going to make the best of it. So I thought it was well done. I thought it would be more political than it was. But it was more about her and about life. And she said so much more of me happened before I became First Lady that really helped prepare me for my life. She said, but my life isn't just those 8 years. I've had a remarkable upbringing by my family and went through the whole thing. So it's worth watching.
You turned us on to something we started watching last night, which I think we're going to be careful. We're going to meter it out because we're really enjoying it. Hollywood series.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, Tim described this to me. He said, "Oh, you're going to love it. You're going to love it. It's fun. It's like kind of a fictionalized version of Hollywood." Scotty Bowers was the real life person who ran that gas station, or was a gas attendant or something, who had set up. He was like a pimp practically, right? Yep. In the real world. This is not the case here, but whoever the main character is, the actor who's got his wife, and he's struggling to be an actor, and he starts at the gas station in episode 1, and then he meets Patti LuPone and takes his clothes off. We're watching the show, and Tim said to me earlier, he goes, "Oh, by the way, you're going to love the show. It's filled with eye candy." So I'm watching this guy.
Who wouldn't go to that gas station? I mean, those outfits were like something the Spanish military wears. I mean, the outfits
with the hat and the high-waisted pants, and the code word is you get in the car and you say, I want to go to Dreamland, and then you're off and running. And they cast this one quite well because the lead is certainly a very handsome young man. Hey, we have Rob from Rehoboth on the line, one of our Uber listeners. So, hey, Rob, welcome to the show.
Hey, guys. You there?
Yes, we are here. Good to have you with us.
Sorry, I hit the wrong button on the phone. Hung up. Okay. Yeah, I just want to fill you in what's going on down here. I don't know if Tim heard. The commissioners met on Tuesday. They had a big open meeting that went on for more than 4 hours and included public comment. And they're planning on opening the beach and the boardwalk on Friday. And there's a big demonstration by this group called Open Delaware or something like that on Saturday or Sunday. We're not getting anywhere near the beach because I think it's going to be a disaster. I feel bad for the Rehoboth Beach Police because they're going to have to deal with all of this.
I did, Rob. I did watch the commissioners and mayors meeting, and I was actually pleased that they were trying to figure out ways to open the beaches. I think it's a little bit, I don't know what the right word is, but for beach towns, whether you're in the Outer Banks of North Carolina all the way through Maine, so much of those towns rely on the revenue from Memorial Day to Labor Day. So I was happy to hear that. And I thought my take on it was, I think this is a Republican or a Trump sort of group that wants to storm the beaches with their coolers and their lawn chairs. And I think what the mayor and commissioners did by opening it up on Friday, it kind of took all the wind out of the sail of them storming the beach because it wants open. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm wondering if they'll storm the beach.
Mike listened to part of it, and my husband, he still thinks they haven't adequately addressed how we're going to deal with these businesses. And our big concern is that, if they don't get some sort of relief, we'll become a ghost town because they're not going to be able to survive on 20% of their business. So that's our big concern. Being said,
I think that's everywhere, right? With the restaurants, right? With all the restaurants.
From what you were saying in Philadelphia and what stores were like, there's still, stuff down here and much easier to negotiate the stores here than in the big city. And hearing what you said and what my friends in D.C. are saying where I normally work.
Right. Yeah, no, all the restaurants across the country, there was something, it might have been on 60 Minutes, talking about this occupancy of 20% or 25%. Restaurant margins are so thin to begin with, there's no way you could survive. And that's going to be a big issue in New York City because think about, John, in New York City, when you go out to eat, how close some of those tables are. And imagine taking away every 2 tables or 3 tables between somebody. I don't know how you would survive with payment.
So,
go ahead, Rob.
There was an article a few years back before all of this that said, there's been a proliferation of restaurants. There's got to be at some point where the market isn't going to support it. And there was a concern that restaurants were going to suffer because there were so many of them that they weren't going to last. So now this has just, made it all the more likely that a lot of places are going to shut down.
Right. Huh. Well, I'll be back down there shortly, so be sure to hopefully I'll bump into you somewhere along the way there this summer when things get back to a little bit of normalcy.
A little bit of normalcy. Also,
yeah.
what John said about retirement, I like being out here full time and not having to go back and forth to Maryland. And I'm starting to look at new things that I might be able to do and be able to work out here more and cut back my Maryland work. So, I like the slower pace, frankly.
Well, that's Rob. Actually, that's a lot of writers are writing about that now. How people, when this event is passed and we're picking up the pieces, there's a lot of speculation that we're not going to really go back to the way it was before, for that simple reason that people have discovered you can work from home. You may not need to have that 2 hour. We used to read about super commutes, people that would commute 2 hours each way to a job, right? Imagine having all that time back. So I think there's healthy aspects to what's been going on. I don't want to minimize it, but I think we're exploring new ways of getting around. And I agree with you. If you could do what you could do from your location down in Rehoboth, much different than commuting and having your business elsewhere.
True, but there are portions of my work that I have to be face-to-face with the people I see and can't just do the telework. But, yeah, I had a 2.5-hour commute from here to there, although I only did that twice a week. I would go in on Monday night and come back on Wednesday night. So it wasn't too bad. Plus, I got to listen to you guys and all my other podcasts, which now I have to take a walk to do.
Well, thanks for the call, Rob. And keep listening, keep watching, and have a great one. Enjoy the good weather.
Take care. Guys. Bye.
Thanks.
Yeah, Rob brings up some great points, though. And I said to Bob when we were driving down from the house that one of the things I miss about the back and forth is the car time. I know it sounds crazy, but that 2 hours you thought maybe you and I would talk on the phone now and then, hands-free, of course, and we would catch up on our audio listening. So
I will say, as much as I love the boys in the booth, hello, Garrett and Steve, I do actually like doing the show this way only because I get part of my Wednesday back. Otherwise, I traveled to Manhattan and didn't get back until 5 in the afternoon or so. So I will say that. But how are you guys doing? Are you doing all right?
Still alive.
Yeah, every day's an adventure,
Still alive, still above the earth, still above the dirt.
Steve, are you going to grow your hair long, or did you get it? Looks like it's getting long there. You're going to look like one of those 70s guys.
I just don't have anywhere to get a haircut. I'm going to have a mullet eventually.
Garrett,
I might stick with it. I used to have a mullet, sort of.
Did you?
Yeah, I used to have like long, heavy metal hair, but it didn't look right, so it was too long in the back. So I looked like
I love the idea of long, heavy metal hair. And Garrett, are you doing? Is your girlfriend doing your hair, or are you able to?
Oh no, I'm pretty bad too.
Oh, okay. See, Tim said to me on the our.
Oh my gosh! Look at that.
Yeah, that's Garrett. Yeah, Steve, you actually your hair just looks a bit longer, but it's styled similar. And Garrett, that's unruly. That's the word I'm looking for. It's unruly.
I needed a haircut like a week before lockdown.
Dude, same thing.
Yeah.
I was going to get one before they shut everything down.
But then I was like, I don't want to go to a barber during this. It was before lockdown, but I'm like, it's still kind of contagious. Guy breathing on you. I'll put it off. And then, jeez.
I needed a haircut a week before lockdown.
Yeah, if we'd all known, everybody would have been storming the liquor stores and the hair salons, right?
Indeed, yes. All right, so Mr. Bennett, what caught your eye this week?
What caught your eye? Here's what Tim and John found.
This is one of these odd, convergence of stories. Mine is kind of similar to yours, John, when I saw it in the deck, and then this kind of relates a bit to what Rob just called us about. So Twitter on Monday announced that they are essentially not going to really open up their offices again, that if you can work at home, they're going to allow you to work at home, and they're going to unload a lot of this expensive real estate that they have. So the CEO on Monday, Jack Dorsey, wrote an email to all employees that said he's going to allow almost everyone to work from home permanently if they so desire. He said he planned to make this decision at some time, but this obviously with what's going on and seeing that you can work remotely on a large scale, he said this really just brought it into focus and made his decision that much quicker and easier. He said that they're not the only one. Google's also said a majority of their people will be working from home through 2021, and also is allowing them to say that if they don't want to come back and they can do their jobs from home, that's okay. Facebook's also doing the same thing. Facebook does not plan to open offices until after July 4th. And they said it's not just the tech industry, also Morgan Stanley and Barclays, they said they've added additional security measures because of the sensitivity of financial information, and are also going to allow a number of their employees to work at home. And they said selfishly, they think a lot of it is, and we've talked about this either on a past show or on Unbuttoned, I don't remember, but they've found that the average workday, because they monitor what's going on in production, that they're getting an extra 3 hours each day out of everybody by working from home. So they said people are working 3 hours longer per day since this has begun. They said it is going to have real estate implications, though. For the past 100 years, it was always known, they said since the late 19th century, if a company did not have an office, it wasn't considered a company. And you and I had initially had run into that sometimes as a virtual agency. But they said as the economics have changed and with what's going on currently, that all these leases are going to either be broken or people are going to try to get out of them. And they said most commercial leases last 10 years, but Google has stopped leasing any buildings in the last month, and they don't plan to lease any more large buildings or large spaces. And the ones they have, they're going to have to start adding in cubicles again. So where they have these big open floor plans, again, we've talked about this, they're going to start adding in cubicles again so that it would provide some sort of barrier for people. And if you did have to go into the office, they said that they're going to do alternate days so that everybody's not there at the same time, and that would help enforce social distancing. And but they said this will really affect real estate in 2021, at the end of 2021, so it won't be immediate. But I think it's kind of sad. A lot happens, I think, when you are in the office with people and you bump into somebody that you might not have seen, or you have a little chat with somebody in the elevator or on the way to the restroom. And but I could see where companies think that it's a great way to save money. I know when we used to visit ad agencies when I worked at Subaru, the first thing all the finance people said when we'd walk into these places, no wonder why their fees are so high, because we'd walk into these mausoleums of beautiful, beautiful buildings, these ad agencies, and the first thing out of the finance guys and the bean counters' minds were, their fees are too high if they can build buildings like this. Why are we paying them?
Yeah, the bean counters never get image. It's image. It's all about the image. The Times just actually ran an article as well about this, and they did mention the big banks, which I believe occupy the most office space in Manhattan, predominantly lower Manhattan. And most of them are not planning on bringing back staff till September. And when they do, it's going to be 50%, and they'll be on a rotating basis. And they're now looking at trying to convert or change their office structure to be meeting places, because you can't avoid meeting clients. There is a time when you want to see people, and then one real estate guy was interesting. He said, everybody's looking at this through the lens of right now. He said, but right now is a moment that's not going to stay this way. It's fluid. Right. He said, and it's like 9/11 happened, and same exact drumbeat of people are fleeing, the office is going to change, whatever. And here we are years later, and there wasn't even enough office space on the island. So at least here in the city, but I think it will, in the short term, it's going to be some very fundamental shifts, no doubt about it. And maybe it's for the better. Although I do think that the novelty of working at home may differ when it's required. You know what I mean? So
yeah, it's fun now. It's all fun and games now.
It's a requirement of the times that we're in and going through this event. But when it becomes the de facto norm, now, do you have to have an office space in your house? Do you have to have a little area? Because you and I both struggle with create little islands of this is where we work and not where we watch TV and do other stuff, right?
Well, I wondered what happens from a tax implication.
Lost revenue, huge lost revenue.
Well, do you say that can somebody claim if you work for a corporation? I don't know how that works. If you work for a corporation and you've carved out an area of your house, is that considered a tax write-off?
I'm actually going
When
to
you
have
work for yourself, right? You can.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. Sidebar, I'm going to have a private conversation with you later about the nexus of taxation, because ours has definitely shifted, hasn't it?
yeah. Yeah.
And for listeners not familiar with accounting or how the government likes to do things, nexus of taxation simply means the place you make your money. And you could be incorporated anywhere in the world, but if you're in Detroit and you're incorporated in, I don't know, Des Moines, you're going to still pay Detroit taxes because that's where you're making your money. That's called the nexus of taxation. Anyway, wonky talk.
What caught your eye, Mr. Nash?
Well, caught my eye also had the word office in it, but a very different use of it as opposed to the what you were talking about. So the article reads, "This website replicates the sounds of being in the office once again. There's even a ping pong match sometimes." So even though this guy writes this, he goes, even though I've worked from home for more than 3 years, it can still get kind of lonely at times. My apartment is usually very quiet, and almost all of my conversations with my colleagues happen silently over Slack. Boy, do you and I know this one, save for the clatter of any mechanical keyboard. So he worked in an office for the first part of his career. He's not been in since. And when the event hit, he came across this site called imisstheoffice.eu. So it's imisstheoffice.eu, and it's made by a company called Kids Creative Agency. You load it, you hit the play button, and you could change how many people are working. And if you click on objects like the water cooler, the copier, or a keyboard, it will add into the soundscape. So I created a quick one for Garrett to play for us.
Are they in the bathroom?
That's the water cooler and the coffee machine. Here's someone chewing.
God. There's the phone. I think we should have to play in the background when we do Caught My Eye, like.
We'd have to really gauge that one carefully, but I just thought it was pretty amusing. So you could move around the office space and click on different things. You could add, you could make the office like one person. You could bring it up to 8, but it says here, the site is a fun reminder of the office environment you might have taken for granted. And the best part is you won't have to suffer through a commute to feel like you're working side by side with your colleagues again. So
that's funny. There's somebody we both know. You probably didn't know this about him, but he used to troll the Fire Island. He had, back in the 80s, he worked for himself. And to give this impression that he had a big office, he had an old tape recorder literally with office sounds on it. And when the phone would ring, he would, even before caller ID, he would start that, and you'd hear all this noise in the background as if there was typing and all this stuff going on. And I remember I called him a couple times. He's like, oh, and then he realized it was being he'd shut it off. But it was anytime he was out looking for new business, he would make it sound as if he was in this big bustling office, which everything old is new again.
I have to give that a high score on creativity because that's very clever. I wonder if it's the person that I'm suspecting and that you actually helped our house identify when you came out once to visit.
No, it's another one. It's another one but both from Philly that made their ways up there and had a bad ending.
That had a bad ending. All right. So what do we got for business birthday today?
Everyone does celebrity birthday greetings, but the Focus Group is the only show in the universe that celebrates business birthdays.
So celebrating today, he's 85 years old. Happy birthday. Born May 13th, 1935, Luciano Benetton. You remember Benetton, John? The Benetton clothing company?
Indeed I do, yeah.
It's a businessman. He's one of the... Go ahead.
I was going to say, I remember their ads in Times Square sometimes. The colors of Benetton, the United Color. And they had a lot of fun with those campaigns. Groundbreaking, actually, right?
Groundbreaking and controversial. So he was one of the founders of the Benetton Group, which is an Italian fashion brand. He served as chairman from 78 to 2012, and then his son took over for a couple of years, and then he went back in the late 2000s in the teens to try to help it out. He was born in Italy, 1935, as we said. His father had a small business, and following his father's death, he dropped out of school to help the family. money. And at the age of 14, he started working in a clothing shop. And he actually managed to save $200 and bought a knitting machine. So he and his sister got together and they put together this 20-piece collection of yellow, green, and pale blue sweaters from this knitting machine. And so in 65, together with his siblings, Giuliana, Carlo, Gilberto, and himself, they founded Benetton. So they opened their first store in Italy, 3 years later in Paris. Their core business consisted of the United Colors of Benetton. And it was very iconic in the 80s and 90s, as you said. It was such striking advertising. In 2000, it was ranked as the 75th largest brand, but in 2002, it had dropped off the list. And as late as 2012, it was delisted from the stock exchange. And that's when the family started losing control, and the son took over, and then he came back. But as of now, they also got themselves involved in sports sponsorships. They did a lot of stuff with Formula One, also with rugby and soccer. They went from 5,000 stores globally, which they now are down to just 1,500 employees with 25,000 workers. The photography that you remember, or those campaigns, were done by a photographer called Olivero Toscani, and he was the creative director. And they allowed him to really push the envelope. In his first group of advertising in 1984, he did lots of multiracial ads and for the brand. And his whole idea was to push the idea of the creative director and of the Benetton family was to really push
the envelope.
Push the envelope or social issues that were going at the time. So the controversial stuff, which is, if you're watching on the next slide there, they included a deathbed scene of a man with AIDS. It was activist David Kirby, who was dying of AIDS with his family in the room. That was an ad campaign. One featured a bloody, unwashed newborn baby with the umbilical cord. That ad was actually put in the Guinness Book of World Records of being the ad that caused the most controversy globally in terms of people being upset by it. Also had a number of ads. There was one they called On Hate. And the particular one here, they're showing Obama kissing. I believe it's the Prime Minister of. Is it the Prime Minister of China? It might be. I'm trying to see the screen. But anyway, so he it was an interesting brand, and I just remember so much of the iconic advertising, but I didn't know that the family was still alive or that it started in such kind of humble beginnings. So happy birthday.
When did the Benetton, in my opinion, or at least to my knowledge, that's a better way of saying it, has not been a retail force for some time now, right?
Right. Although I think they're not so much in the U.S., but they appear to be. They still have a global footprint. Even in 2015, they said what they've done with a lot of their stores that they've contracted them out. So I guess they've contracted the name out. So there's 25,000 contractors, but that are running stores. But it's certainly not like it was in the heyday of the 80s and 90s. But then again, what retail is, right?
True. Yeah.
So they said in 2015, each of the siblings was worth about $2.9 billion.
Ooh, so no, we don't have to worry about them closing stores,
sweaters.
do we?
Yeah.
No
worries
upset. There.
PETA got upset with them because they used to use the wool off a sheep's butt, and they didn't like them. PETA didn't like them taking the wool off the sheep's butt because then it would get bit by flies. But we won't go into that. So
PETA has a problem with everything.
PETA's got a problem. There was a factory that collapsed in Bangladesh. They also were in kind of trouble with that. They denied that their clothes were being made there, and somebody found them in the rubble. So I don't know why companies do this, right? Somebody says, but they were one of 29 companies in this huge factory. It was an 8-story factory. It collapsed, killed 1,300 of the workers. And Walmart, Carrefour, Bon Marché, all these companies were in there. They all denied that they were getting clothing out of there, but people were picking through the rubble saying, here's your tags. So they all had to do.
Well, that's a good business birthday because they changed the face of advertising, probably forever, because they did push a number of envelopes to the point where we could say and do things with out-of-home outdoor campaigns and print books or print ads. Excellent. All right. As many of you may know or remember, Fiverr, Fiverr, has been a partner of ours here on the focus group since the beginning of the year. It's an incredible resource to find freelance help for just about anything you need. Tim and I have used it for design projects, for web projects. You know someone who had a jingle done recently, which I was amazed that you could even just go to Fiverr and get a jingle done, And I like the idea of a jingle. I think we need a jingle ourselves, come to think of it.
That'd be a fun idea.
Yeah, but if you go to Fiverr.com, you can search for any type of work, and there's all kind of filters. You could do, if you need something in 24 hours, you can find someone to do it in 24 hours. You can search by country of origin or where the worker is from, where the gig worker might be from. And you can also search, importantly, by what level they're at on Fiverr, because sometimes the more projects they take in and the better, it's like a star system or something like 5-star, 4-star. They're like top creators. So do you know anybody that's been using it lately? Because we've had a lot of people contact us. We had Lord.
Yeah, no, I do have another friend that's going to help them with a logo, and they were going to take our advice, which was if you use someone for a logo, we had a budget in mind. I'll just say it was $500, and the great thing is you can take your budget and go to Fiverr, and you have options whether you pick premium or you pick the regular service. Premium is simply that probably somebody with a bit more experience or that's been doing it a bit longer, so they've got a lot of history and reviews on the site. But the great thing about it is you could say, I want to pick someone in the $200 range, the $75 range, or the $25 range, which is what you and I did. And not ironically, the best logo that we had was the mid-level range, was the one that you and I worked with the person and really liked the logo. The person that was most expensive was not necessarily the best, right?
I always smile at that because you know how I was. My expectation was you're going to get certain kinds of work from the different levels.
Right.
And I can't wait till you get the most expensive guy to chime in. And when the work came in, it was okay. But we had already kind of settled on the guy that was the middle of the road price wise, and he did a great job, and he did it really quickly. So it's an amazing site, and it's perfect for these times, right?
Right. Yep. And it was nowhere near as sophisticated as we were both excited about the guy in Australia, but but that was the great thing about it is that we did have three very different focuses on what they thought our logo should be, and we were able to find one out of all the work. We did get a number of different options. So be sure to head over to Fiverr, Fiverr.com, and you'll receive 10% off your first order by using our code, which is FOCUS. Again, it's pretty easy, Fiverr.com, code FOCUS for 10% off. And while you're there, you'll be able to search any sort of talent or creative freelance talent you're looking for. Again, Fiverr.com, code FOCUS. Thanking them for being part of us here on the Focus Group. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we've got a shop talk to talk with you about that deals with aging and what's going on right now, right, Sean?
You bet.
Stay with us.
You're listening to the Focus Group with Tim and John. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com. Focus on the savvy side of 9 to 5 with the Focus Group.
Try, really try.
Listen, laugh, and learn with Tim and John.
I never try anything. I just do it.
Hey, that's a good movie for staying at home. Faster, Pussycat, Kill, Kill. I can't recommend that movie enough. Russ Myers. That's where that line came from. I don't try anything. I just do it.
When's the last time you watched that?
Probably about a year ago. We're due for a viewing. We're due for a viewing because I love that movie.
Do you watch it start to finish?
We will watch start to finish. It's one of those films that I will watch straight through because the more you see it, the more you're like, how do they make this? How did the actors not crack up on set or whatever? All right. So as Tim teased before the break, there is an interesting article that came out, and it was called LGBTQ Seniors Hit by Stay-at-Home Policies, and it's a triple whammy, are fighting back. What that really means is they're actually joining organizations, staying more in touch, and trying to fight some of the problems of isolation. The most intriguing thing for me in this article, so they featured SAGE, which is a wonderful organization that is for the seniors of our community, for the LGBT community. And a lot of them actually, when they were interviewed, talked about the fact that it wasn't that they were in their apartment by themselves. Many of them were, many older gay and lesbian LGBTQ people are singles. I don't want to generalize, but there is a lot that are. And it wasn't the fact that they were alone that was bothersome. It was the disruption to the activities that extended their home. So there was one woman who lived in Midtown Manhattan, and she would routinely go to the Museum of Modern Art or go to galleries or see friends. And that gives you the feeling that your little apartment is more than that, because you have all this other stuff you can do. But
Right.
once things close down out of caution and keeping people in place until we're through this, then she was relegated to her space. And so she doesn't mind being in her home, but what she really misses is the connectivity and the actions of the organizations. But there are also some troubling stuff in here as well, where SAGE would keep in touch with certain seniors, and then suddenly they would not return calls or emails. They're not sure what's going on. They can only follow up so much. Maybe the person's, just in a mood, or they're just not returning calls or something. But your mind tends to go to the worst when it's a senior. And what I mean by that is we have is it an illness or something? You know what I mean? You and I, Tim, talk about this all the time when we get calls from our parents. Is it the call?
Right.
I don't mean to be grim about it, but that's what the SAGE was saying about some of their clients that they can't reach right now.
We had Michael Adams, who's SAGE's chief executive officer, on, and he's throughout this whole article here talking about it and brought up some points I didn't necessarily think about. And they said, particularly as you mentioned, if you're in Manhattan, and they did focus a bit on New York City here in the article, is that while your routine got disrupted, the other thing you're being told is stay in because you're of a group you're in a high risk category or a high risk group. So you're sheltering in place, so you can't even go out to get food or get shopping. And so there was a lot of issues in terms of this vicious cycle of, I want to get out of my apartment, but I'm told I have to stay in because I'm a high risk group and I can't get food to eat. And a lot of them have different food issues, or whether it's getting medications from the pharmacy or whatever. And SAGE has been trying to help a lot of these seniors. And the one thing I thought, and I do remember when Michael was on our show, you had talked about volunteering, and reading this story again, which was quite lengthy, I thought to myself, there's a number of these chapters across the country. And I thought it would be something, if you felt like you really wanted to make a difference in someone's life, or get out and be of some help during this time, that these organizations would welcome the volunteers to help either deliver meals or check up on people. And I thought it was, in that regard, I thought it was something that everybody should consider or look up their SAGE chapter in their towns.
So it's funny that you bring that up, because I had the same feeling when I ended the article. And then I thought to myself, I wonder if there's a way for us and the focus group to do something. And my mind drifted to this thought, the simplest thing in the world. I would love to connect with some of the seniors in the SAGE program who used to be in industries that we're in right now. And it would be
great. Yeah.
Well, or photography or whatever. It would be such a fun conversation to have with how did you do business back then? How much has it changed? And I bet we'd find that some things just don't change. Clients are clients, right? Models are models, right. Cameras. But I thought that would be a wonderful way of also raising the profile of an organization like that by profiling some of their membership, right?
That's actually a great idea, John. That really is a good idea. Here we're talking, creating segments on the fly, but that actually would be a great idea too, because everybody's always talking about what's the next best thing, what's digital marketing going to be, or what is marketing looking like 10 years from now. But it would be interesting to talk to a number of people who've been through it and say, how did things get approved in the Mad Men era, right? A lot of these people would have been in the 60s and 70s.
And even down to how their careers were formed by how they had to manage their identity.
Right.
So towards the end of the article, they actually profiled about 4 different seniors in different regions, and they talked to one guy named Kevin Burns, and he's 71, lives in Albany. Considers himself lucky. He has his own home, and while he lives alone, he feels very connected to a wide circle of friends and family, and he has enjoyed Zoom cocktail hours and his regular trivia quiz with a group he joins. He said, being at home hasn't been a terrible strain. It's been good to see familiar faces, albeit virtually, but he does miss the gym and a bunch of other things. I would love to know that they don't talk about what he did for a living, but in the capital region, he's one of the vintage pride people at the Capital Region's LGBTQ Pride Center because he's he's a different generation.
Right.
So I just think there's a lot of learning and a lot of cool stories that we could probably tap into and just have. And what a great way to have someone spend their day like, oh, I got the focus group today. I got that I got that podcast I got to go on.
What's it on? When's it on?
What are they going to talk about?
Why do they want to talk to me? Why do they want to talk to you? That would be you. You'd be in the home. What do they want to talk to you for? You got nothing to report.
Well, I just think it's important. I'm glad when a story like this appears, when we can focus on individuals and groups of people like the LGBTQ community and how they're threading the needle of this time period. And more importantly, since it's such a requirement to be isolated. You don't want to take a community that already is isolated by the nature of their age and where they're at in their careers and their retirements. And then you don't want to make them even further down they're more lonely or more disconnected. So I like when it's brought to my attention and it makes me think of stuff. But I do think we are onto something with them. It would be a fun segment, I think.
Yeah, and they did say there was a number or in a couple of the stories some discrimination still even in the senior centers of people when they would identify as either being gay or lesbian, that there was discrimination from the other seniors. So it's something that I think is overlooked. I think in our society in general, I think we overlook the aging. We don't respect our elders as other cultures do, I think, as much. And in reading this story, it really made me think, and it sounds like you were in the same position as me to think that there's probably some way that either we can do something or people out there could do something to help, which is always a good thing.
Well, and just to wrap some of that thinking up, this Kevin Burns, I was saying.
He sounded like a pistol. He sounded like a pistol, by the way. I mean, he was doing. I figured out Zoom. He's like you. He's a Renaissance man. I figured out Zoom. I'm doing Zoom cocktail hour.
But then he says and I think you may be right. Maybe, he's probably close enough to Saratoga if they had the race season going. He says something that I would have said myself. The virus is cheating us of our remaining time. So he's looking at all the time that he's forced. Obviously he's doing his thing to protect his health, but he's also looking at that in terms of that's time I'm not using to socialize or be with friends or do the stuff that I normally do. And it's somewhat lost time, and it's lost time at the end when you don't want to lose time. You want to, you know what I mean? You want to make sure. In fact, it's the inverse. When you're younger, you just think you have all the time in the world. And when you're older, you have a very limited amount of time and you're aware of wasting it. So I always thought that was so I think you're right. Kevin Burns may be someone who could have
been John T. Nash.
Could have been a different version of me. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna be gone any minute. I'm wasting time. This thing's robbing me of going to Tanglewood and going to the art center and all the other stuff. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
The gym. When are you going to stop going to yoga in the gym? Are you one of you'll be doing it when you're 90? You'll be at the yoga, doing the gym.
You and I talked about this briefly earlier. So I've been able to do Zoom yoga with one of my. It's seeing everybody in the class because that's also a very social thing. As far as the gym goes, when I dropped the car off at the garage, one of my attendants who works out with his wife, great shape, super friendly. Hey, bud, how you doing? Are you keeping up with your workouts? I'm like, no, I can't go to the gym. He goes, well, you're gonna not want to go in the future. And he described what they're going to do to open the gyms, appointment only. You can only go 3 times a week. I mean, that becomes unusable for me. So I do have to think about health, like a healthful way of doing body weight exercise. So long answer, long-winded. I'm not going to stop being active as long as I could be active because I think it's good for you. I think it's good for your joints, for your everything.
Go on long walks. Continue riding your bike.
Exactly.
Maybe get a tandem bike. Maybe Bob can ride in the back. You get a bicycle built for 2 and go up the Upper West Side.
How perfect is that, right? Which on a tandem, one person works harder than the other. I think it's the one in the front. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, you'll be in the front. Bob will be in the back. Put his feet up on the handlebars. You'll drag him up the Upper West Side to the GW Bridge, and and come home and have a sandwich.
We have to drag him up everywhere. That's where we're right near that. So it's a short drag to the bridge.
So hey, thanks for joining us today. Thank you, John. Thanks to Garrett and Steve for bringing us out there. Thanks to Rob for giving us a call. Thanks to our friends at Fiverr, Fiverr. Head over there to get some freelance talent for anything that you're looking for, from branding or logos or web design, etc. And get 10% off with your first order with our code FOCUS. We want to make sure that you tune in and catch us every Tuesday for our podcast, which is Unbuttoned. And of course, we're here live every Wednesdays at 1 p.m. You can find everything about us at focusgroupradio.com. We hope everyone is staying safe, and we'll see you next week.
It's The Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Accessible on all platforms. Subscribe, like, and rate us on your platform of choice. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com.
That was a stunning focus group.